but everybody else as well, to my parents' place, and my parents have flown the coop and gone to England. So, number one, they say they're going to watch a video. Number two, they want you for Ezra. So, there you go, you're already booked for that. And second of all, welcome to people who were at Limud or weren't at Limud or should have been at Limud. Great, I'm sorry that we didn't have Shiur and Shmooze. But as you all know, Limud Jerusalem is just round the corner.
When?
Yes. Hopefully, maybe the end of the summer or maybe October, but we'll let everybody know. And we haven't even spoken about Tzedakah. You'll tell us at the end.
I'll think about it.
Okay, all right, so you, David.
Okay. First of all, I'm very happy to be re-invited to this particular location. The last time I was supposed to speak here was the one time in my entire career that I was too sick to do some public lecture. I mean, I've missed classes at Pardes where I teach, but I've never actually met a public or like a class where people came in from the street. So thank you, Maury and Sue, for being willing to have me back. And I understand you're flying away in case you won't be left doing the shiur yourself. My name is David Levin-Kruss. Today our class is called The Heretic, the Time Waster, and the Fundamentalist. And I'm going to be sharing with you 3 different life coaching cases from the practice that I have as a life coach. Since this is a small group, maybe we should just go around say names. I mean, I know most people over here. Say names and let's say favorite piece of kitchen equipment, and then I'll start. Somebody want to start?
My name is Sarah, and my food processor, I guess.
My name is Nadia, and the zhuzha, just because of the name. Really.
Good one, yeah.
Jill and Mixmaster. Do you call her Mixmaster?
Magimix?
Magimix.
Deborah, microplane.
I'm Ido. I don't know how to say it in English, but koteshum. How do you call it in English?
Cameraman. We'll come back to you, yes?
Cameraman. My name is Jody Garfinkel, and I guess it would be my stove and oven.
Penny, top, and my Shabbat kettle.
Warren, and I've had a kitchen designed because the oven didn't fit into the previous one.
My name is Noam, I guess microwave. Pizza cutter, microwave.
My name is Effie. The hand salad spinner. It's all the water out of the lettuce and everything else.
And I'm David. My joke answer is that it's the pizza. It's the magnet on the fridge that tells you where to order the pizza. But I have to go. My real answer is with Nadia, the zhuzha that you stick in is really a great thing.
What about Yona?
Yona, I think Yona was happy to be left out. Yona, what's your favorite piece of kitchen equipment?
Magic bullet.
Okay.
What is that?
It's a device called Magic Bullet.
Anyway, now I know everything
Nobody
that I
from
need
our
to know.
generation remembers the Ronco Vegematic.
Anyway, now I know everything about you that I need to know, so let's just start. As I said to people, I teach at Pardes, where there are lots of students in their 20s who are often, deciding what they want to do with the rest of their lives or dealing with different crises that they might have. And over the years, I've been very, very lucky that I've been one of the teachers that students have come to speak to with the different issues that they have on their mind. And I teach Talmud, I teach Jewish philosophy, and I counsel students, and I really like the 2 different parts of my job. I do other things as well. But they were all very, very separate. And I really enjoyed both of them. And one day I thought maybe I would do some courses to help me be more effective with my students. And since the students are not a therapist, and since students are not coming to me for a long time, they usually come to me once or twice because they have a specific thing they want to deal with, I thought I would do a life coaching course, because life coaching often works on quite speedily getting to people to solve certain issues that they might have. people over here want to give a bit of a definition of life coaching, what you've heard about it, what you know about it, what it might be? Yeah, Penny?
It's not fair, I'm a life coach.
Um,
As far as I'm concerned, life coaching should be transformative, or don't bother. It's just a means by which you can tap into your resources and improve your feeling, your life from your perspective in any area of your life, really.
and how might
So
that be?
realise your potential more fully than you were before.
And how might it be different from therapy, say conventional psychotherapy?
Well, I can speak about the kind of life coaching.
Absolutely, that's all
all
we're interested in.
It's very forward-looking. Therapy
Mhm.
tends to be dealing in a lot more depth with particular problems and issues that people have, whereas life coaching should be something which it can look at those issues, but it should be moving you forward. It should be giving you a direction and challenges that you set yourself, and a way to move your life forward. So it's it's not fair to say that therapy is not dynamic, because whole school of therapy is called dynamic, but it's more dynamic, has more movement about it.
Great, thank you very much.
Something
Anybody else? Yeah?
I'm not an expert like her, but I think coaching is taking specific goals, like not looking at everything and the whole picture, just specific goals, and shortly, briefly going into them.
Yeah, fair.
That's
Very
really
good. The three things that I normally point out, one is looking forward, working forward, less interested in routes and more interested in solutions. Secondly, is working with people's strengths, rather than focusing on what is not working, what people are not good at, rather working on people's strengths, expanding those strengths, and using those strengths to get people go forward. And the third thing, rather like a sports coach or a driving instructor, a coach very, very often will never do the work for you, but is very, very much on the side, rooting for you as you go along. So, unlike in therapy, a coach might call you up during the week to make sure that you're doing your work. They might give you goals that you have to set during the week, and then look at your homework when you come back. So very, very much like a sports coach or a driving instructor, they're not doing it for you, but they're there for you along the way. Anyway, I did this coaching course, and it was good, and I came and it worked with my students, and that was that, and I carried merrily along my way. Until one day, a student asked me to read a particular book that had an effect on him. So I read the book, I enjoyed the book very, very much, and we started discussing the book, and we honed in on a chapter that was very, very helpful to him. We then honed in on a paragraph that was very, very helpful to him, and we started discussing the paragraph, and before I knew it, we were doing chavruta over the paragraph of this book, the same way we do chavruta over Jewish texts, and slowly but surely, this was a secular book, by the way, as he started doing the chavruta, slowly the next steps were laid out before him, the different things that he said. And a light bulb went off in my mind, and I said, maybe we've hit upon something. Maybe it's possible to do coaching using general text, general literature, as well as Jewish texts. And that is what I've been doing since then. I've been working with students. Any student at Prodes who's a full-time student has, as part of their package, they have 3 coaching sessions with me. They'll bring texts about something that they want to deal with in their lives. We study the text together, and together with regular coaching methods, we go into the next steps. And as I said, today I'm going to bring you three examples of cases where text had a very, very powerful impact and created personal breakthroughs for different people. Any questions on the methodology before we actually look at the cases? Anything? Whatever it is, it's very fun. I mean, coaching in general, one of the things I think about it is that it's just fun. It's just, as you said, it's dynamic, it's fun, it's enjoyable. This is particularly fun and enjoyable. On the one hand, it works because people feel, hey, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about my text. So that's almost like a trick, if you will. But on a deeper level, I think literature, texts speak to us in very, very powerful ways that we don't know about. And if we can uncover that, then maybe we can uncover things about ourselves as well. I have a friend who always, every single time I tell her a story, she asks me whether it's true or not, whether it really happened. Am I exaggerating the story for effect? So today I have to say to you, yes. The cases are mostly composites. They're groups, they're mixtures of cases of different people. They're neat. In real life, the cases are really as neat as what I am presenting. They're my favorite ones because the texts were really used in very, very powerful ways. But what I will say is that every person who I'm speaking about tonight has given me written, by which I mean email, has given me permission via email to speak about the cases. So yes, we are going to do gossip, but it's very, very anonymous gossip. So I'm put together.
David, how do you choose the text?
That's the question that people always want to know. First of all, it's and I also, since then I've also started a private practice. So it's not only Prodest students that I work with, I also work with people, and that's an answer to your question. First of all, it's self-selecting. It's self-selecting. In other words, the type of people who come to me to do coaching are the type of people who love reading and who love literature. So usually they've got something that appeals to them. If they don't come. Sometimes I help people to choose a text. Often I will give people texts, and I have my favorite texts, one of which we'll look at today, one of my favorites, which I like to work with. But you'll be surprised how often things just come in people's minds. I'm working with somebody now who's working on issues of jealousy. So he asked me, I happened to have given a class on jealousy. So I gave him my source sheet, and I said he couldn't find a source. So I said to him, choose one of the sources. And it's interesting, when he actually came in, he chose his own source. He didn't choose one of the sources that I'd given him. So people usually find something that they like. Very, very often it can be a favorite song. It's also incredible what one can work with. I am working with somebody who's like totally crazy about the sports pages, and you'll be surprised how much powerful work we've done on things that he's brought from the sports page. I mean, I'm not very up on sports, and he's got to do a lot of explaining to me about different sports. But it's amazing how much we're able to do on the sports page and things like that. So text is defined very, very broadly. But today we're going to be looking more or less at Jewish texts that people have brought in. Okay? Happy campers? So let us, we're going to take one and pass one on. Hello, no problem. There we go. You want to take and pass on this?
Good to go. Not somebody
Okay, so the first one is one of the first cases I ever worked with. Somebody came in and he brought me two texts. One was from Rumi, who is a central Sufi mystic, or perhaps the Sufi mystic writer. What's important about Sufis, it's a form of Islam that has a lot of meditative practices. Many Western people, not many, but often, when Western people convert to Islam, they become Sufi mystics. And he also brought me a piece from the Slonim Rebbe. Let's read it. I'm going to ask somebody to read it aloud very quickly. Not quickly, very clearly I meant. Somebody to read it aloud. Somebody will read the Rumi. Somebody will read the Slonim. And then, as we're going through it, just compare and contrast. We'll first look at it as a regular text. Just compare and contrast. How are these two similar? How are they different? Somebody want to read it nice and clearly? Great, go ahead. What's your name?
Michael.
Michael.
This is one thing in this world you must never forget to do. If you forget everything else and not this, there's nothing to worry about. But if you remember everything else and forget this, then you will have nothing in your life.
Done.
It's as if a king has sent you to some country to do a task, and you perform 100 other services, but not the one he sent you to do. So human beings come to the world to do particular work. That work is the purpose, and each is specific to the person. If you don't do it, it's as though a priceless Indian sword were used to slice rotten meat. It's a golden bowl being used to cook turnips. When one filing from the bowl could buy 100 suitable posts. It's like a knife of the finest tempering nailed into a wall to hang things on. You say, but look, I'm using it. It's not lying idle. Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds? For a penny an iron nail could be bought. You say, but I spent my energies on lofty projects. I study philosophy and jurisprudence, logic, astronomy and medicine. But consider why you do those things. They're all branches of yourself and your impressiveness. Remember the deep root of your being, the presence of the Lord. Give yourself to the one who already owns your breath and your moments. If you don't, you'll be like the man who takes a ceremonial dagger and hammers it into a post for a peg to hold his dipper gourd. You'll be wasting valuable keenness and forgetting your dignity and purpose.
Okay, so that's Rumi. Somebody want to read the slow number, please? The volunteer to read the slow number?
Effie.
Go ahead.
There is no one more beloved before God than an emissary who has been sent and gives his soul to his mission. As it is written in the foundations of worship, in the name of the Holy Ari. Since the creation, every day and every hour is different from the one that came before it. And therefore, every person, since the creation from the world, is different from one another. Because of this, a person is not able to fix that which another has fixed. From this, we see that every moment since creation is instilled with a special task that cannot be filled at another time. Also, every person since the creation of the world has a special task that no one other can fulfill. These words of the Holy Ari shine a new light on the meaning of creation and the life of man. All creation has been made the emissary of God. Every day and every hour, there is a special mission at that moment from God. Therefore, for every person, there is a special role that is the mission designated to him by God. Thus, all of creation is made the emissary of God.
Great, thank you very much. Turn to the person to the left or to the right of you. Let's just spend 5 minutes, do a little chavruta with each other, asking yourselves, how are these two texts similar to each other? How are they different from each other? Compare and contrast, and then we'll discuss, and I'll tell you what the case was.
Maybe this is also because knowing Sufi is
they go on.
Islam is all about submission to the world. Judaism is submission, and Judaism is more very strong sense of God. God is mentioned, but not the same way submitting. Shalom Rumi is that here the focus is on the individual, whereas here it's
It's also like if you recognize the sort of
yeah, and it's also like
tool you have,
there seems to
you would know what to do.
if we could focus
Yeah.
stress on God's will, the Lord's will. Whereas this seems to be more of a positive. Also, there's a lot of negativity actually, rotten meat, how ridiculous it
Just a little
sounds.
bit.
Well, it's like the king is something, you do something, and you do something else.
Yeah, no, there's definitely the overall feel of it.
Each is specific to the person, so it's like each has a different purpose. But at the end, it's give yourself time to catch your breath and roll, which sort of sounds like everyone is.
Do something.
Well, I'm saying that everybody has a special task when no one else can.
And it can only be done at a special time. There's also a point in time.
I don't think the second one says that.
In this moment situation, cannot be
I also,
special task that can
because
special purpose, not just to see people, but
also because it says if your time is fixed, so I'm talking about spiritual work rather
It's like
than
everyone's got a certain task.
There's a lot of.
fixing this
It's one of the
Well, actually,
timeline
not for each person.
rather
Each moment in life, you have difficult, and each person, each different time, each different place.
How could you use?
So it's much more complex.
The
first one is just
It's a poor man's food.
It's not determined.
They're also the only kind
Very
of
specific
when
times.
You don't
so
think
like I'm wondering if that's
time
like links to some sort of
active.
so if it doesn't work,
focus
then it's
on
not
elevation.
your task.
But don't use something that's gold just for turnips. Use something special. Don't slice that or rotten meat. Like just Indians do in this case. It's like
Oh yeah.
I think also the first one focuses on the negative. The first one says
Again, back to like evolution, sequence, it's not like I don't know
You're
that
getting very depressed about
a
that.
physical thing needs a bottle needs fixing, but
Intentional, purposeful ways.
I don't know. This mitzvah needs to be done.
Just the whole
And
thing here. There was one thing which was never to see. The second one was like double. The first over here, there's double.
maybe you don't know what it's something you
Also,
have to
the last one.
Don't do it.
It says also every person's foundation. Telling you, still telling
I
you
think
there's
that's
something.
the board
Attitude.
in order to take the water out of the water.
Who said that?
You were the whole.
They used
The
to
person
board.
charging the person.
Yeah.
I guess the second one is better.
To post or
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I overheard some good things coming along, especially from physical center. I've written them down, I'm going to teach them as my own ideas. But first, before we look at the differences, I think a lot of people rush to the differences. Let's ask ourselves, how are these two texts similar? In what way, what do they share, these two pieces? They're not like two random texts that were brought in. Somebody want to share what's similar about them? Deborah? You didn't put your hand up. I decided to pick on somebody. You were in the bad. Decided to pick on somebody. You were in the bad. You were in the bad position.
Thank you. They're both encouraging a person to find what their mission is.
Beautiful. They're both encouraged to find what their mission is. Anything else? In terms of similarities. Yeah.
One person's mission can't be carried out done by anybody else, and any other time.
And they both say that? The first one is also saying that?
I think so. No, maybe he doesn't say that nobody else can do it.
No, I think that's already a differentiation. Anything else that they share?
Well, it really does say so human beings come to the world to do particular work.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, fair. So it is there. So both are saying that you, yeah, fair. Both that you have your particular mission.
I think there's an element of predestination to both of them.
Explain.
But this is already determined what you should be doing. So you just have to find out.
Correct. That it's somehow inherent in who you are. So that moves us a little to the differences. How might the two texts be different? Yeah, Effie?
The Rumi seems to be more about submission, even though there's a focus on humanity's purpose, person's purpose. There's a focus on what happens if you don't, if you're not living up to expectations, and there's a certain negativity. You need to submit, which Islam in many ways about submission, whereas Judaism is more about centered on the person, what the person is doing in this world, and it's more in that sense human-centered. And I didn't see anything really negative in the Slonimer Revis. Just you should do this and this and this and this is good, and there's a holiness and a sanctification both for the person as well as the time that deed is being done. And it seems to be more of a focus on the positive.
Yeah, fair. Other ideas about how things are different? How things are different?
The whole, I mean, it's similar to what he said, but the whole tone. Even just the first sentence, there's one thing in this world that you must never forget to do. It's right away telling you what to do. It's right away, if you remember everything else and forget this, then you have done nothing. Well, the second one starts with, there is no one more beloved before God than an emissary. It's completely positive, it's completely encouraging. The whole tone, the underlying message is the same, the tone is completely different.
Yeah, that's what the idea that you said that I like, that just from the beginning it's like, what a big difference is somebody says, there is no one thing in this world you must never forget to do, versus there is no one more beloved before God. By the way, I would hesitate to call one Islam and one Judaism. I'm sure we could find texts the other way around. If we wanted to, I'm sure we could find some very, very strong texts in the Jewish tradition telling you this is what you have to do. And if you don't do it, you're really not a good person. And we could find other texts in Islam that are more loving. But I do think that I think there's some difference there going on.
We were talking about, well, the first one was much more negative, but also that there's just that one thing. Whereas in the Islamic religion, it was like, maybe there's one thing now, then one thing later. And in other words, maybe we're not doing such a, because we were talking about, well, what happens if we don't know what that one thing is? So
everybody comes.
We said that, well, actually, maybe the one thing that we're doing now is maybe the right thing right now, but like in next week or next year or whatever, it might be a totally different thing, which is more positive.
Yeah, I just want to say at some time at this point in the discussion, somebody always says, "Oh, what if I don't know what I'm doing?" And that's the last case we're going to look at. I'll solve that one. You know, what if I don't know what I'm looking? But I think you've hit on something very powerful. That for Rumi, it's one thing, and the person has a thing that they've got to do with their lives. And if you don't do it, you're messing it up completely. Whereas with the Slonimer, it's much, much more the time. There's something about the time. There's something about the moment. And, you know, you could miss the moment, and there could be another moment. And, you know, you could not miss that moment. Whereas with Rumi, it's like if you're in the wrong direction, you've messed your whole life up. Yes?
Yeah, I agree. It's more dynamic, the second one. I wouldn't want to dismiss the Rumi, because the first thing I thought when I read the Rumi was about values, which is incredibly important when you're doing coaching. And it's about identifying the value of things to you. So I think it could be quite a good way into that. But what I really like about the second one that's different is that it's more open about, we were talking about relationships, about your relationships with other people, and that's why it's more dynamic as well. Because it talks much more about, you know, other people, and I think it would help you much more in coaching around your relationships with different people and how you had problems with them, whatever, and give you a different perspective on that. The fact that they were here to do something different to you.
Who prefers the first text to the second? Who prefers the Rumi to the Slonimer? Anybody? Because it's interesting, I often have people who say, I like the Rumi, he is black and white, he tells it like it is, he isn't sugarcoating it, I need to be told what to do, and you know, and I need to be, you know, to be told to shape up and ship out. I've often had people who say they really like the Slonimer, the Rumi, whereas the Slonimer is like too abstract, like I don't, you know, what happens if I don't know? Idor?
One thing that I think both texts share is that they give you, the reader or us, really a feeling of a lot of worth, like we're worth a lot, we have a lot of ability, we can just with one small thing really do very important stuff. We're like a very, in the first one we're like a important sword which can do amazing stuff, and in the second one each of us can be the emissary, you can really have great things. So it's uplifting in many ways, both of them.
Yeah, fair, I never thought of that. It's really, really nice that although the first one is saying don't mess up, and the second one is saying listen very carefully, they both are saying a human being is of tremendous worth and can do tremendous things beautiful. Yes, sir?
Yeah, but I'm also thinking that the line in Rumi that says, I spend my energies on lofty projects, I study this and that and the other,
Yeah.
is saying that your value might be a specific value, but
Yeah.
it mightn't be the lofty value that you, the wonderful thing that you think you
Yeah.
can do. I'm probably better off as a bus driver.
Yeah. No, it's there's that, it doesn't, it seems as if he's saying some lofty thing, but you're right, you could be reading it very much the other way.
Yeah, I'd be reading it the other way, that if we're called upon to do, as we were in the early days of the state, to do manual labour and build the agricultural industry, then
That's what you should be
That's
doing.
what you should be doing.
Yeah, fair. Very, very nice. No, I think it's definitely a reading. Anybody want to give a guess as to what the case was, what the person came in who brought these texts in? Any guesses?
They feel they're doing the wrong thing, that's what they should be doing with their life.
Great, yeah, fair. That's definitely part of it. And most of it, actually. Any other ideas?
They don't have a purpose in life?
Their value, their self-value.
Yeah.
I guess there's some anxiety about, what's the right thing to do.
Everybody says is correct. Anxiety, not sure what to do. Everybody says is correct. But the garb of this is very, very fascinating. The person who came to me was, he'd grown up in a Sufi household in America. His parents were American Gentiles who'd converted to Sufi mysticism, and he subsequently converted to Judaism. And after 5 or 6 years of being Jewish, the novelty wore off. What do you know? And he came to me and he was considering, like, either just leaving Judaism, going back to being a Sufi. It was a very interesting case because my rabbinic hat versus my coaching hat versus my openness hat, and everything was all... So anyway, so he came to me to speak to me about what to do. He was having Hirurim, to doubt and thinking of leaving Judaism. And he brought me these two texts, and we worked on these two texts. And what we basically came to was something I think very, very interesting. And that is that converting from one religion to another actually isn't sufficient to give you your life's purpose very, very often. It's true that it's very important. It's true that it can change who you are. But ultimately, this person still needed to find out who he was. And I said, it's interesting, you didn't bring me the 10 Commandments according to Sufi mysticism and the 10 Commandments according to Judaism. You could have brought me hundreds of different things, thousands of different things to compare Sufi mysticism to Judaism, but instead you brought me something about purpose in life. I remember when I was not in Paris, in another yeshiva, I remember my Rosh Yeshiva said, he said, you can change your clothing, you can change your name, you can change where you live, you can change everything you like about yourself. There's a Baal Tshuva yeshiva, as you can hear. He says you can change everything about yourself. He says, and one day you're going to wake up, you're going to look in the mirror and say, I still have a really bad sense of humor. So one of the things we worked with this guy is really helping him to try and find out what the right thing for him to do was. And one of the things we realized is that the question was not converting to a new religion or going back to an old religion, but in fact finding out what the right thing for him to do was. What's also particularly interesting about Sufi mysticism is that some people might have heard of Avram ben Arambam. This was Maimonides' son. Avram ben Arambam was very, very into Sufi mysticism. And he wrote, and this is not like an urban legend. We have his writings. He said that, the Sufis have very specific forms of genuflection, different types of bowing and things like that. He said what the Sufi mystics have is a mysticism that was around in the Second Temple that was forgotten by the Jewish people, but remembered by them. God forbid Jews should ever have something else from somewhere else. Everything always has to come from us. But it was very, very interesting. Avram ben Arambam actually said that we should draw in ideas from Sufism into Judaism in order to enhance it. And we discussed this together with this guy.
That's what Rabbi Zalman Shachar Shalomi did with renewal.
Correct, that's true, but that's very, very much true. True what he did, correct. What happened with this guy in the end is he realized that he'd been making too rigid a wall between his previous life and this life. It very, very much was like, I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was Sufism, I didn't know anything, and now I'm Jewish. And one of the things that happened, he stayed Jewish, and he is still Jewish, and he's observant, and he's very, very into it. But the important thing for him was to break down, through finding his purpose in life, he realized he didn't have to be so scared of his previous life anymore. It wasn't going to come up and haunt him any moment, and he was able to honor his parents and honor what they'd given them, and to draw it into his own Jewish practice, and not feel the need to convert back. So it was a very, very interesting case. Questions or comments? All good?
Did he, you might have said this, but did he, most of us felt that we liked the second one rather than the first. Did he warm to this because...
Okay, so that is definitely true. Look, the second one also very much, I mean, this is much more than I know, it's like really from the heart of the Kabbalah, with the world itself having a personality and a soul that speaks to you. He did feel it. He did feel it. He felt that the second one was more loving, more affirming, and the Rumi was more no. But he himself admitted that we could probably find a text the other way around. But I think that there was something loving that had drawn him to Judaism. I mean, as I said, he chose the texts. So, and I think it's very, very interesting that both were about finding life's purpose, but one was much, much more negative. The other one was much, much more affirming and loving. Anything else? Yes?
How do each of them say to go about figuring out what the purpose is?
So that's going to be the last case, which we'll draw back to this. We'll draw back to this case. Okay? Yes?
I like in the Rumi that he actually gives graphic examples to show what concepts, because it's easy to get hold of than just, like you said, abstract.
Correct. No, well, that's why some people said that. Some people, I know it's strange, but some people really love the Rumi. I mean, we also have sociological research on this, mostly in churches, but it happens in shuls as well, that you often have a minister who will be extremely harsh and shouting and rigorous and make people feel bad. They're often very, very popular. Human beings very often have a deep inner need to be told that they're bad, that they're wrong, and there's something very deep and powerful about someone's being told, you have to shape up, and this is the way things are supposed to be.
The whole Muslim movement.
Correct. The whole Muslim movement is a very, very, many powerful way of saying, you're not there, you could be there, now come and do it.
Yeah.
And there's something very powerful.
It's the
also,
Jewish baptism.
What do you say?
Jewish baptism.
Correct. It gives people also a feeling, like what people said, what Idor said, that both of them take human beings very seriously. Sometimes when a person's told you're not good enough and you could be better, what they hear at the same time is, hey, I could be better. That means I'm actually amazing. I could even be better than I am. This case is something very, very different, almost completely different, much more pedestrian on the sound of it. Somebody came to me, it was a woman who had early young teenagers, she had parents who were getting older, and she did not have time to do anything. I think many of us can identify with this. She wasn't having ideas of converting to any other religion. She wasn't having any deep crises. She just didn't have time to do anything. On the face of it, it was a classic case of time management, which is something which lots of coaches deal with, and it's a very, very fun thing to deal with. And she brought me the beautiful, beautiful poem from Kohelet. Somebody actually we can read it in Hebrew here. It's just, you want to read it?
Sure.
It's just so beautiful. Read it slowly, but it's just so beautiful.
לכל זמן ועת לכל חפץ תחת השמיים. עת ללדת ועת למות. עת לטעת ועת לעקור נטוע. עת להרוג ועת לרפור. עת לפרוץ ועת לבנות. עת לבכות ועת לשחוק. עת ספוד ועת רקוד. עת להשליך אבנים ועת כנוס אבנים. עת לחבוק ועת לרחוק מחבק. עת לבקש ועת לאבד. עת לשמור ועת להשליך. עת לקרוע ועת לתפור. עת לחשות ועת לדבר. עת לאהוב ועת לשנוא. עת מלחמה ועת שלום.
Thank you very much. And somebody should really turn this into like a 1960s
Song.
song. It's like asking me to be turned into a song.
It should have been, huh?
Yeah, well, I guess you just missed it. Yeah, no, I'm teasing. Yes. Yeah, that's all right. No, I'm teasing. So she brought me these very, very beautiful words, which we started working with. So let me tell you what happened in the case. The first thing that we did is, this wasn't a person, she wasn't poor. So the first thing that she was doing a lot of stuff that she could be paying people to do. She needed more help around the house. There were things that she could pay people to do. So the first thing we did is we got her to actually support, to actually employ people, to help her do things around the house and help her do certain errands. Second thing, which I don't know if you did in your course, but I'd learned from my course, we went to the same person, which I learned from my course, is she went around and she asked the different members of the family either what they most wanted to do around the house or what they least hated to do. And we found out basically what each one really wouldn't mind doing. Now, on some level, it's completely unfair. Why should everybody else in the house get to do what they like doing or what they hate least, and she was left with everything else? It wasn't fair, but we live in an imperfect world, as you might have noticed. We live in an imperfect world, and so that's what we did. That's what we did. And so we started by getting her help. Secondly, by having people around her do what they didn't mind doing. And the main thing that I did is I put her on a draconian schedule because she just couldn't. She just was unable to manage her time. Basically, we divided the day into half-hour units. She had to have a specific thing to do every half hour. It was horrible, don't get me wrong. She had to write it down. And she had to then, do it every half hour, check it off, phone it into me, and she actually started becoming extremely, extremely productive through doing this. And that was it. She went. Then she phoned me up a little while later. She wants to come back for a few sessions. It's working very, very well. Everything is going very, very nicely. But she suddenly realized now that she's getting done what she needs to get done, she suddenly realized she's not doing what she really wants to be doing. She's getting everything done, but she said, I feel that there's more to it. And we went straight, and I do this with a lot of clients, I use this text, it's one of my favorites. I said, let's look at the text, and let's use it as a scaffolding. Let's use it as a suggestion for things that you want to do in your life. So a time to give birth and a time to die. She was very, very caught between her parents and her children. She's this very classic sandwich generation, parents getting older, but children still need her help. So we worked on that. How could she spend time with her parents and her kids at the same time? How was she able to sometimes say to her parents, no, I need time with my children or my husband, without feeling guilty about it?
Was she a perfectionist?
What?
Was she a perfectionist?
No, she was the opposite, I think. That
Really?
she, at the beginning, I think that she just couldn't get anything. Maybe. Where did that question come from?
I don't want to say.
Another one that really spoke to her was a time of wailing, a time of dancing. That we found, again, it's a very serious part of life. She just had no empty calories in her life. She wasn't just doing anything fun. I think in the end she took up Zumba or something like that. But she just took something fun that she enjoyed doing, that she could move her body. That was the second thing we found that she needed to do. The third thing that she needed to do was a time to be silent and a time to speak. She was just busy all the time. And we wrote in on half an hour. It wasn't meditation. It wasn't anything sophisticated. It was just half an hour every day to sit and do nothing. To think about what she wants to think about. She just needed time to do nothing.
To be with herself.
To be with herself. But again, it wasn't even directed or anything. It was just half an hour just for herself without eating or reading, which was interesting. Like she often would eat when she felt, she needed some time off, and she would often read. It wasn't just half an hour by herself. So those were the three things. That was the last time I saw her. I mean, I've seen her since around, but it was the last time I saw her as a client. And then about a year later, she sent me this poem by Yehuda Amichai. And anyway, somebody will, this is just because it's not as well known, we'll read it in English. Somebody want to read the Amichai poem? Go ahead, read it.
Okay. A man in his life doesn't have time to have a time for everything. He doesn't have enough seasons to have a season for every purpose. Kohelet didn't get it right when he said that. A man needs to love and hate in the same instant, to laugh and cry with one and the same eyes, with one and the same hands to throw stones, and with one and the same hands to gather them, to make love in war and war in love.
Just that people should know, you should read the whole poem. It gets much darker after this. This is the light part. But it gets much darker after this. It's a very beautiful poem. But what she wrote to me and said is she didn't need the half hours anymore. She said that she's gotten so used to living her life with the half hours, and that by, with the half hour that she had to do. And secondly, by learning slowly to do things that she wanted to do, she said she was slowly developing internally the ability to know what to do now and how long to do it for and when to stop and when to start. And she said, thank you very much, but I don't need the half hours anymore. And I then went back myself to the text. I went back to myself to the text and I read Mefashim about it, and it's very, very fascinating. When we read L'chol Zman, Ve'et L'kol Chafetz Tachat HaShamayim, what does it mean? Does it mean all these things will happen? Does it mean there's enough time? Does it mean if one thing happens, this too shall pass? There are many, many different ways to read what he's talking about over what is going on over here. Not only that, we noticed that if you examine the text, there are a few very, very interesting things. They're not negative to positive and positive to negative. They're all mixed up. I had an engineer in my class the other day, and he tried to work out a formula as to when Kohelet started with the negative and when he started with the positive, but he couldn't come up with something. They're not necessarily opposites. If you look at them, they might be related. They're not opposites. Also, it's very, very fascinating. 4 of them are nouns as opposed to verbs. Et spod, ve'et rekod, et milchama, ve'et shalom. These are nouns as opposed to verbs. And I think what's going on over there is that they're saying these 4 are not necessarily in our control. There's some things that are not in our control. There's some things that are just beyond us. Other things that we have the ability to act. And I think this is very, very much what this woman learned. There's some things in her life that were out of her control. She had to learn to accept them and work with them. And other things that she really had the ability to act upon the world and to act upon it in a positive way. Nadia, or were you stretching? Yeah.
No, I wasn't stretching. I also read it as things in our year that we don't have control over. For example, a time to weep, like a time of waning, a time of dancing, like Tisha B'Av as opposed to Tu B'Av. And I'm not really sure about the killing, the time for killing, but certainly also healing after Tisha B'Av. Time to plant, Tu B'Av. Not sure about the uprooting as well, but what about the casting stones and gathering stones? I'm thinking about Shabbat as opposed to when you're supposed to stone somebody.
Yeah.
Supposed to. But also here in Yehuda Amichai, he was speaking about the stones. How can you explain the stones?
Well, a lot of commentators say that it's got some type of a sexual connotation. The time that it's some type of a sexual illusion. Where is it exactly?
I mean, the bit about what is it about keeping away from each other? That maybe is Nida.
Yeah, but it's also interesting. It can be a very simple thing. A lot of people and commentators have suggested that it's just building a wall. That when you build a wall, some of the times you're putting those bricks on top of each other. Some of the times you're getting rid of bricks or not using the stones that you should be using. I think it's a saying that there are times in life that one is very much building, other times when one is undoing something that has been done or destroying in order to build. The last one we're going to look at, this is my masterpiece, but it's not me. It's totally, just don't think that all cases are like this. But this was somebody who came, this was a protest student. His Bible, his knowledge of Bible was outstanding, far, far superior to mine. He'd been to day school and studied lots of different yeshivot, and he really knew the Bible very, very well. Couldn't make a decision. But I'm telling you, go across the road to Aroma, and couldn't decide which sandwich he wanted to buy. Once he finally decided which sandwich he wanted to buy, couldn't decide whether to buy the half sandwich or the whole sandwich. He had big decisions to make big decisions he needed to make, and he just couldn't make the decisions. I said to him, bring a text to me that explains to me how you're feeling, and he brings me Eliyahu. You'll become you want to read it? It's just that it's, yeah.
ויגש אליהו אל כל העם, ויאמר, עד מתי אתם פוסחים על שתי הסעיפים? אם השם האלוהים, לכו אחריו, ואם הבעל, לכו אחריו. ולא ענו העם אותו הדבר.
So this is the story which I'm sure most people in the room know. Elijah is saying to the people, it's very common in those times to have more than one religion, the religion where you came from, the religion where you are. Lots of Jewish people are serving Baal. He says, look, make up your minds. Either you've got to follow Baal or you've got to follow God, but make up your minds, and the people are silent. Any responses that people have here to that piece that I've just read? Anything that people have to say about it? How does it strike you, that piece?
If you say to people, the first recorded historical task of the first Jew was to destroy idols.
Yeah.
You say that's what we're meant to be about.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, but we haven't got idols here.
Yeah.
And the thing for me as a Jew is for working out what is the idol in this particular period of time. And then saying, Abraham, my father, went out and destroyed that idol. That's my job.
So Yaakov, I think you're picking up something very, very strong. Eliyahu wasn't really giving them a free choice. He wasn't saying, well, I have a fine religion based on ethical monotheism, but if it's more like you to worship nature and you believe in Wicca, well, those are two fine religions and we can both be part of the interfaith religious club at the local campus. He wasn't saying that. He wasn't really giving a choice.
He's sarcastic.
Correct. Even if you read it exactly. Even if he was reading, if God is God, then go after him. But it's much less so. And it's, as you say, he's playing with them, he's being sarcastic. It's not a real choice. Anything else? Very good. Anything else that people want to say about that piece?
Well, I think it's a forward to the trial he's going to do. Like he's about to show that, in his sacrifice, the fire is going up and the Baal's prophets are going to fail. So
exactly. They were zapped. They zapped later. It's not.
He's like preempting the show.
Absolutely. So I said to this young man, I said to them, what do you think of this text? And he said, I don't really like it. I said, why don't you like it? And he said, it's too black and white. He said, it's too absolute. He said, my decisions aren't like that. So I pointed out to him, I said to him, who's telling you have to make a decision? Is it your parents? Is it your girlfriend? Is it your friends? Society says no. He says, I feel it myself. That I have to make a decision. It's coming internally. He said, I don't know what his parents really felt, but they really weren't pushing him. And I said to him, and it's interesting, I said that you brought a text that you really don't like. I said, you chose the text. I told him the story of a man who used to get to work every day, and he'd open up his lunch pail, and he'd see peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and go, ugh, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and throw out the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That happened day after day after day. Until finally his friends said to him at work, they said, if you hate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches so much, ask your wife to pack other sandwiches for you. And he looked at him, laughed, he said, my wife, yes, exactly. Yes, he says, my wife, he says, I pack my own sandwiches. Exactly. So I said, it seems to me you've packed your own sandwiches. Come next week and bring me 2 more texts. Let's replace, and this, by the way, is a very classic life coaching idea, let's replace Elijah in your head with somebody else who's more helpful to you.
Aren't you worried
Yeah.
by asking him to decide to bring a text that he can't decide what text to bring? That's why he didn't bring a good text in.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what did happen. And I guess if he made them, if it had been hard again, it wasn't really not a good text. It was a good text for him because it expressed the feeling of his black and whiteness. He didn't like the text, but he didn't like where he was in life either at the time. So it was actually appropriate for where he was.
It brought a problem.
What?
It brought out the problem.
It brought up the problem. Comes next week, but he can't make up his mind. He says, Moses or Joseph, I'm not sure. I want to replace, but I'm not sure which one. So first of all, Moses and Joseph are very, very interesting. Moses was a member of the Egyptian court who became a leader of Am Yisrael. Yosef is a member of a family of Am Yisrael who becomes the head of an Egyptian court. Moses takes Jews from Egypt to Israel. Joseph took Jews from Eretz Israel to Mitzrayim. Bless you. Both of them lived in 2 different cultures. Fascinatingly, on the one hand, their lives are complete opposites. On the other hand, their lives are almost mirror images of each other. So we spent a while studying, and this is what we came up with. Moses was told at the beginning of his life, at the burning bush, this is what you have to do. It was very, very clear what he had to do with his life. Your life is to get this group of people from here to there. What?
He was 80 years old.
What?
It wasn't exactly in the beginning.
That's true. I should say at the beginning of his career. I should say to be correct. He wasn't exactly young when it happened. Yeah. It was at the beginning of his career. Joseph had visions of grandeur. He knew he was going to be somebody great. He had the dreams. But he didn't know how it was going to be. One minute he's the favored son, next he's in a pit. It's literally up and down. Favored son, next he's in a pit. Then he's up again, he's being sold, then he's back in a pit, then he's high again. His whole life literally was ups and downs. Only at the end of his life, or towards the end of his career, I should say, when he meets his brother again, he says the lines that we have over here, don't be sad, that you sold me, God sent me here to preserve life. Only at the end of his life does he actually understand what it's all about. Kierkegaard, the Protestant theologian, he said, life can only be understood backwards, but it has to be lived forwards. And this, I think, is in many, many ways Yosef. That he didn't know how it was going to end, but he had to live his life forwards. He had to make the most of every moment he had. The irony, of course, is that Moses, who knew what his life was going to be, spent his life wandering. Joseph, who didn't know what it was going to be, he was very good at creating 7-year plans as to how to do things. So I said to this young man, I said, there are actually there are many ways to make decisions or to find out what your life's purpose is, but one of them is like Moses. There's certain people who know, I'm going to be an artist, I'm going to be a doctor, this is what I want to be. So I said, to do that, pretend that at the end of your life, somebody's making a dinner in your honor. Somebody's making a dinner in your honor. Write out the speeches from that dinner. And I said, Yosef is something else. I said, Yosef is, he took whatever was offered to him. I said, write down every single opportunity you have in life at the moment, and just put an X next to anything you don't want to do. You don't have to justify it. Put a check next to everything you want to do. Put a question mark next to everything you're not sure about. By the way, both of these are very sound life coaching techniques to find out, what you want or what opportunities are available to you. Interestingly, I see the Moses option a little bit more like Rumi. I know what I want, I've got to be clear, I've got a plan. And the Joseph option I see being a little bit closer to the Slonemer, which is there are all these opportunities, you've just got to decide which one is the one that you're going to fulfill. And as I said, I think they're excellent techniques. What happened with this guy was quite incredible. He came to me 2 days with a big smile on his face. He said, I haven't done any of the homework, but I made the decisions that I need to make. What happened with him is he needed to be liberated from this idea of there's one way to make a decision and you have to know exactly what's with your life. Once he had 2 ways of doing things, he sort of relaxed and he understood, you know, he'll make whatever decision he made. Anyway, suffice to say, I'm not going to say too much because who knows how people can work it out, but there was like a program that had like 10 people and it was a scholarship program and he went to speak to them and he got himself the 11th person and he got himself money because he's extremely qualified person, and I see ever so often how well he's doing on Facebook. Anyway, so a little while ago I wrote to him and I said, look, I'm beginning to do presentations. Do you mind presenting me the case? And he didn't remember it at all. He remembered the Elijah. He said, I don't remember bringing in Moses. I don't remember. He believed me. He said, I don't remember. He said, I've blanked it all out of my mind. But he says, I have no trouble making decisions now. And he could hear I was really, like we had back and forth, I was a little disappointed, you know what I mean? And he could hear that I was disappointed. And it was very, very sweet. He said, and that's the way, he said, I don't remember. He said, but maybe that's the way it should be. So I thought that was very sweet. But I want to conclude with something else which I think is very, very interesting. Look at the Shmot and the Breshit. They both begin with the word va'ata, and now. They both begin with the word va'ata, and now, and continue with a trip, if you will. In Shmot, Moshe is taken to take Am Yisrael out of Egypt. In Breshit, Yosef, there's no trip, but a few psukim later, the brothers go back to Eretz Yisrael to pick up Yaakov. So it's both of them is a time word followed by an action. If you look up at Melachim Aleph, Ad Matai is also a time word. Until when? But they're jumping around, and then they don't do anything. V'lo anu ha'am davar. Paralysis has set in. They can't make the choice. Paralysis has set in. I gave this class recently, and just before the class, somebody was speaking to me who'd invited me, and I said to her, how is your new boss? And she said, you know, he hasn't made one decision since he's come in that I like. I've disagreed with every last decision he's made. So I said to her, well, that's really interesting. So I assumed, and she says, but I'm delighted, I'm really happy with him. I said, what do you mean? She said, my last boss never made a decision. She said this one, I disagree with him, but he's made the decisions. Sometimes one has to make a decision. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. And who knows what good or bad or right or wrong is. As long as you're plagued by indecision, it's ad matai and poskim al shtei asifim v'lo anu ha'am davar echad. The moment that you make a decision, it becomes va'ata, and it becomes going on a journey, whatever that journey would be. And really that's what I try and do as much as possible. It's like help people on their journeys. So that's what I have to share. Thank you very much.
How are we going to connect the last one to the first?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think that in many ways the Rumi is more like Moshe, who he knew. One thing I do want to say, people, and even if you're not interested in coaching, even if you're not interested in coaching yourself, I love doing this. I'm very, very happy to give people a free session, one free session, just to see how it works. Even if you're just curious to know how it works, it's really, really fun to do it. I'm really in the process of developing. I'm writing a paper about it at the moment, and I'm working on it. So if anybody wants to come, don't even feel like, if you have no intention whatsoever to come afterwards, don't worry about it. It's not like you're not. I know. And if my email is on it. If anybody's interested themselves in coming for a session or coming for a few sessions, I'd be very, very happy to do that. I'm very happy to speak about it. I really love doing this kind of stuff. So thank you all very, very much for coming.
Thank you.